because that's happening, there's a crumbling of the old. So the old traditions are starting to crumble. We're seeing it all around us, and new ways are being birthed. Hi, I'm Emily Cady, an empath, spiritual medium, and an intuitive channeler, whose life was completely transformed by a near-death experience in 2015. I was once burdened by societal expectations, and I was on the brink of burnout when I was able to find my true calling by living my authentic life, free from external expectations and pressures. Before I had my near-death experience, I was somebody that had a lot of pressure on myself. I had a learning disability as a child. Actually, I've had 3 NDEs in my life. The first one I had, I was about 18 months old, and I stopped breathing, completely turned purple, and ended up in the hospital for a good week in an oxygen tent. And at that time, they put me in the oxygen tent because of brain damage, which did cause some brain damage. It caused a learning disability as a young child. I had a very hard time understanding how to read and write. And because of that, I was a high performer. I wanted to overachieve and people please. So I went into just isolation to learn how to learn by myself because I didn't learn the conventional ways. However, that worked only so far for me. At one point, I was just on the brink of burnout, just trying to prove that I was equal to my peers and my family. I wasn't even in touch with who I was and what my desires were. I was living life for everybody else. I was exhausted. I found myself, it was in my later 30s when I had my 3rd NDE. And at that point in my life, I had 2 very successful businesses that I had owned and operated. And I had married a gentleman who I was not, I knew I needed to get out of the marriage. I loved him, I wanted the best for him, but we were not a good match for one another. And so again, I was living for somebody else. I wasn't living for myself. However, there was a good 7 years of that marriage that I was trying to figure out how to exit, and I didn't know how to. So I just stayed complacent. So that was up until my NDE. I was just an overworked, high-achieving person, a very sensitive person. I'm an empath, as I had said earlier. And so I can feel and sense other people's emotions and feelings, and because I can feel that, I will try to overcompensate. So I know if they're in pain or something, I want to overcompensate, maybe not disrupt anything for them, because I don't want them to feel the pain. So for instance, being married to a man that for 7 years I wanted to get out of the marriage, I knew I was going to cause him great pain by leaving the marriage, and I didn't want that. So I had to, I sucked it up. That's what an empath, or that's what I did, unfortunately, being an empath. So up until my 3rd NDE, I was burnt out, I was exhausted, and I really didn't have, I didn't have purpose or drive in my life. So my first NDE, again, I don't know very much detail because I was a baby, essentially. What had happened was I had an ear infection and a very high temperature. I can't tell you the details of how high it was. I know my mom would probably remember, I just don't. But I do, from the stories I've heard, it was, I just completely stopped breathing. My parents, they lived in a small town, and so they rushed me to the local doctor in the small town, which is probably about a 10-minute drive. Or probably from when they left the house till I got to the doctor, about 10 minutes. And and then I was sent to a nearby city that they put me in a hospital for a good week into an oxygen tent. I do remember being in the oxygen tent. That's all I can remember on that. So the second NDE I had, I was 16 at the time, and I had a medical procedure that put me into a coma. And it was a procedure that my mom was with me, and she was actually leaving. She was taking me home. I was being released from the doctor early, even though they had me under anesthesia and I didn't fully wake up. And so on the ride home, I don't even remember these details. I remember not feeling very good, but I remember on the ride home getting woozy and feeling awful, and asking my mom, because she had me in the front seat of her car, and I said, can I lay down in the back? And she said, no, I'm going to get you home and you can lay down at home. And the next thing my mom said was, at that time, I completely stopped breathing. She had to pull over. She had to resuscitate me and bring me back. Fortunately, there was somebody, an EMT that was nearby while they were trying to get in some emergency vehicles. And so she had somebody step in and continue to do CPR on me for quite a while. I want to say it's about 10, 15 minutes before the emergency vehicles came and rushed me to the hospital. What I remember in that moment of that NDE was being very peaceful. Absolutely peaceful. I don't have as much detail on that NDE as I do on my third one. I just remember being in this very euphoric, dark space, and it was peaceful. And I remember at one point I was in the ambulance, and the EMT was pounding on my chest to wake me up. And that brought me back into my body, with that pounding on my chest. I didn't want to wake up. I remember thinking to myself, like, why are you pounding on my chest? I'm in a very peaceful state. I don't want you to wake me up. And I was brought back into my body at that time. I do remember that one. So on the second one, I just went to a black space. Actually I couldn't see my body. I didn't have an out-of-body experience. I couldn't see my body. I didn't see any angels or anything. I just remember floating in a black space and feeling very peaceful and loving it. Sorry for the gestures. I don't know why. That always happens. So yeah, having that, that really peaceful state, and very comforting there. So on my third NDE was in 2015, and I was having another medical procedure. In this procedure, I was injected with a medication, and when I was injected with the medication, all of a sudden I was feeling woozy. I was feeling like I was gonna faint, but the intensity of those sensation and that discomfort was amplified so much more than ever. I fainted before in my life, but it was so intense. And as I was like trying to talk to my doctor to tell her, hey, I don't feel good, I need some help, nothing would come out of my mouth. And then I remember thinking, well, I gotta at least put my head between my legs so I can get the blood to my head. And I couldn't move. Nothing. I just was like in just this complete discomfort. And as I was in this discomfort, all of a sudden, I had this this moment where I was lifted out of my body and back into that black space that I had talked about earlier from my second NDE. I was lifted into that. I no longer had any discomfort. I was completely at peace. My body had no pain, nothing. I didn't have an out-of-body experience. Again, I didn't look down at my body. I was just in this black space. And I'm in this black space, and it's euphoric. It feels so incredible. And I'm floating in this space, and as I'm floating, I all of a sudden see this white light at like the end of this tunnel, this black tunnel. And I'm effortlessly just floating up to it, and there's no fear. There's no hesitation. It's just love up there. And there's a silhouette standing in front of this white light, and I'm just excited to go meet whoever this being is in front of the white light. And I think it's really fascinating, because if you think about being down here in this 3D realm, and you're in a dark, alleyway with a white light and a silhouette, you're not gonna go walking towards it. But in this moment here, I'm in the spiritual realm, and I'm floating towards it, and I want to be there. There's no fear. As I'm floating towards it, all of a sudden I had this thought, oh, I'm transitioning. I didn't even realize I was transitioning. And so it came to me, I'm transitioning. And as I was excited that I was transitioning. You don't have any fear. You're just like, you're in the moment. And as I'm there, all of a sudden I realized, wait, my mom, my dad, and my beloved dog, Buster, are going to be devastated when they find out that I died. And then all of a sudden I was shown 3 timelines, and they look like thermometers that has the liquid mercury in it. And the liquid mercury was like showing a timestamp of how long they would be in like crippling grief. And I could see that on each of their timelines, the crippling grief was only a short portion of their life. It wasn't the rest of their life. And so I was like, okay, I can go. They're gonna be fine. Now, the other thing I think is really fascinating is I'm an empath. And being an empath, I have always been concerned about how other people feel, because I can feel their feelings. So here I'm in this transition state. I'm concerned about them, but I don't feel their feelings. I knew at the moment that they were going to have devastating feelings, but I was detached. It was the first time in my life I felt like detached and not connected. And it felt really empowering to me. I could still care about them, but I didn't have to take on their emotions as mine. Yeah, I saw the 3 timelines of each of them of how long they were going to be like in crippling grief, because that was what I was concerned about. I didn't want their whole life to be just destroyed over me transitioning. And I saw that they weren't going to be. So, and I love that I was not attached emotionally. There's this weird thing in the spiritual realm. You're there and you love your loved ones down here, but you're not emotionally attached to them. It's very empowering. Whereas down here, we experience separation, we experience grief. Up there in the spiritual realm, we don't experience that. So as I was just floating towards this being, and I had accepted that it was my time to transition. I was okay with it at this moment, and I'm moving forward. All of a sudden, I saw this force come at me, and it pushed me back into my physical body. I woke up in the doctor's exam room. I didn't know who I was. I had no clue who my doctor was. My doctor was yelling my name, Emily. I didn't know who Emily was. I didn't understand anything. And I also didn't understand the confines of this white, stark exam room. Like in the spiritual realm, everything is expansive. There are no limitations. There's nothing to confine you. And here in the 3D realm, it's very confining. It's very limiting. And I woke up with complete amnesia. I didn't understand anything. It took me a while to figure out who I was. It still took me even longer to understand who my doctor was. I was scared to death. I didn't know if she was here to help or harm me. I had no clue at all. Eventually I realized, okay, she's here to help me. And I had to start to figure out who I was again, because when I woke up, I seriously lost a sense of who I was. What had happened to me in this moment was I had a grand mal seizure, and I completely stopped breathing. My heart stopped. Everything stopped. My doctor had to completely resuscitate me to bring me back. So when she was resuscitating me and bringing me back, that's when I think I was being forced back into my body in that moment. Especially right now, because right now we are going, I've been working closely with my guides. So the most I go into the future is my guides will tell me, Mother Earth is shifting. The consciousness is awakening here on Earth. And as people are awakening spiritually, it's shifting the vibration here on Earth. And because that's happening, there's a crumbling of the old. So the old traditions are starting to crumble. We're seeing it all around us, and new ways are being birthed. And so this is, because this is happening, timelines are shifting really fast. And it's really hard to pinpoint exactly what's going on in the future. I could have done it 10, 15 years ago really easily, and I would be on target with my predictions. But today, things are shifting that it's really hard to pinpoint exactly, because it could be one way one minute and the next minute it shifts to another. And so it's unpredictable right now. The vibrations are shifting and they're very high here on earth. I do, for my clients, some of my clients will ask about some predictions. Their guides will show me their future timeline. Sometimes it hits and sometimes it does not. And it's because of the timelines are constantly shifting right now. Doesn't mean, sometimes it doesn't, and it doesn't mean that it won't in the future too. It may be that I went too far in the future, or maybe it just is not for them in this timeline. Absolutely. So I work on this with all of my clients. I work on it myself every day, is raising your frequency, raising your vibration. The goal is we're in this 3D plane. So in my near-death experience, I went up into the 5D or the 6D. And so I was able to experience like limitlessness. And we're currently, the Earth density is a 3D. It's dense. It's heavy, it's limiting, it's confining, it's war. And the goal here is, how do you raise above the 3D and just get even into the 4D? Most people that are awakened, they're in the 4D. They're in this place of, there's more to life than just work. What is it? What's my purpose? That is awakening. That is transitioning out of this 3D density that you're just in this cycle and you can't even see clearly, and you don't even know that you can't see clearly. You're now in the 4D and you're starting to see clearly. You're seeing there's more. That's raising your vibration. So when you experience that, lean into it, keep leaning into it, don't resist it, and see what it is that makes you tick, what makes you happy, what makes you want to get out of bed in the morning, and just keep following that. One thing I like to talk to or work with my clients is, they always ask, what's my life purpose? And I have this thing where you follow your breadcrumbs. Like, if you look over your whole lifespan and you say, okay, when I started, I loved music, and I was excellent at it, and I loved it so much, but there was no money to be made in it. So I kind of focused on politics. And my parents encouraged me to that. So into going into politics or whatever, becoming a teacher, whatever it is. And I diverted away from my passion and I went into what I knew was secure. I'm not saying quit a job or anything, but just go back and reassess, what did you love as a kid that you may put down because other people had put expectations on you that you couldn't make money at it, or you couldn't do, it wasn't the right thing to do. And if you were to go back and you would really enjoy it, then that's probably your life purpose. So follow the breadcrumbs of your life. What was really hard in your life, but you forced it? Me, what was hard in my life was school. What was hard in my life was working under a corporate umbrella or starting my own business and forcing myself as a round peg in a square hole. That was me living up to other people's expectations. That's following my breadcrumbs of that was not my life purpose. My life purpose, if I look at it and follow my breadcrumbs, I was always connected to spirit. I was always connected to people. As a young kid, I was doing fundraisers for third world countries and sending money over. That was my passion as a kid. That was something that if I follow my breadcrumbs, that's my life purpose. And so following your life purpose is helping you understand why you're here. You have a purpose here. We all need you, and we need you to step into your purpose and stop hiding, because we are going through this transition, and you came here specifically for this transition to help humanity get through it. And the only way you can do it is if you step into your purpose. The wars are happening right now because the old ways are starting to crumble, and the old ways are holding on to their power. And the awakening, the new consciousness that is coming in is shifting that. For me personally, it's absolutely devastating what's going on. I don't understand the reasoning for it. It makes no sense to me. What I believe I can do only for myself is I always pray for the victims, always pray for those who are suffering, who have lost loved ones. I pray for the loved ones to transition over. And I continue down my path of awakening and thinking of, if I this is my belief. If I am whole within myself, then me being whole within myself, I can radiate a positive energy off to other people around me. And that positivity can have a ripple effect that can go out to other people that need that comfort. They need that peace of mind. If I choose to follow what's going on in the wars and get into that hype of the scarcity mentality that is being fed on the media, then I'm just causing more. I'm feeding into it. I'm feeding that energy to grow and get bigger. And so my personal mission in this life is to stand firm with who I am and to trust that I can stay solid in these uncertain times that we're currently in, these unsettling times, so that if I'm solid and I trust source energy to guide me, I trust my guides to guide me through this and take each step one at a time, then I can hopefully have a positive impact on those around me, to help bring comfort in these uncertain times that we're living in. As for World War III, I really honestly, I have not tapped into that energy. I don't want to tap into that energy. I pray that we don't cross that path. We are going through a major shift and a major transition, and the ways of what we all know and have grown comfortable with are starting to crumble. We're starting to see like more solar flares. In 2018, I think there was like 0 solar flares, and this year alone there's been, I want to say it's over 60. The solar flares are bringing an influx of energy to Earth, bringing an influx of energy to each of us individually. And it's doing this to help awaken us. It's doing this to help us through the shift that we are currently in the middle of. So as we go through the shift, the quicker that you align with your purpose, align with your awakening, don't force it, just align with it, trust it, allow your guides to guide you through it. Your guides are with you every day, every night. They are with you 100%, and they are here to support and guide you with whatever you need. You don't have to hear them, you don't have to see them. You just have to believe that they're here for you, and ask them to guide you every step of the way and where you're at right now and where the future is going, because none of us know. It's uncertain what's going to happen. But if the crumbling of the old ways actually falls through, then there's going to be rebirth. And the birth process is not always pretty. It's not always easy. And so if that's the case, prepare, be smart. What I see happening is more people going into communal living and supporting one another, having, people that farm or grow vegetables, and just helping support community is what I'm seeing this transition. I do see a food shortage coming, and I'm not a full-on prepper, but I do have enough food and water to last a few months. Because with this increase of solar flares, we are looking at potentially being off grid. It may or may not happen. I don't know, but it could happen. It is already starting to impact our technology. We're having days that Facebook goes down, or different internet services are going down. It cannot sustain this increase of energy that's coming into Earth right now. So my advice is, 1, get to know who you are, get to know your purpose, and get to know your guides, and ask your guides to help you. That's, I think, the biggest thing right now. Help you, guide you to whoever it is that's gonna give you some wisdom if you're feeling confused and lost. If you're getting sucked into the media and allowing that fear to overtake you, ask yourself, is that really you're aligned with who you are? If it is, maybe you're supposed to be an advocate in something to help people out. If it's not, then you need to reassess and divert your energy to what feels aligned and good to you. By doing that, you're going to be so much more level-headed for any uncertain time that we are possibly heading into. My biggest takeaway from my near-death experience was, one, being an empath. I was now empowered, and I saw that I could live a life that I didn't have to take on other people's emotions. I could care about them, but I didn't have to take their emotions on as mine. As an empath, my experience has always been, for some reason, thinking that I need to take on other people's emotions to help them. And that is not the case. It actually enables them, it hinders them, and it hinders me. So after my NDE, I came back realizing that I could operate different. It didn't happen overnight. I had the realization, but I had to work through it, because we also still, our ego is there. The brain waves, the brain paths have all been formed over the years of us living. So I came out, one, very spiritual. I could see and hear spirits, even more so than I had prior. And two, I had to learn how to reprogram my brain, because I was not the same person. So coming out of it, within 6 months after my NDE, I had the courage, and I left my husband. And I couldn't do that before. I had no courage to do that. All of a sudden I had the courage and was like, it's time, I gotta go. The second thing that happened is I closed my businesses, because I knew that I was not aligned for those businesses. And so I walked away from 2 very successful businesses because I had to follow my life purpose. And I went into hibernation. I absolutely went into hibernation for years. One, I didn't want to come back. I was not happy being back here. It was because it's so euphoric on the spiritual side. And so I had to understand why I'm here and how to integrate what I learned into this life, so I can fulfill my purpose. So what I started to do is I hired different spiritual gurus to help me understand how to work with the spiritual realm. Early on in my life, I could always work with the spiritual realm. I knew they were there, but I didn't know how to protect myself. I didn't know how to create a sacred space for it. So when I was doing it, I was working with lower vibration entities, and they would scare me. And so when all of a sudden I had this access to the spiritual realm, like I could go in, like right now, I could go into the 5th and 6th dimension very easily, putting myself into a trance and work with spirits. But I knew I needed to protect myself, and I knew I needed to create a sacred space. I knew I needed to harness and understand how to work with these gifts. So I hired a mentor. She worked with me for years. I've hired a few others since then, just to really help me develop my spiritual gifts. I've been doing some research on NDEs, and there's a lot more of them being reported, and I don't know if that's because of technology. I know that they've always happened. But I feel like right now, there's a lot of them happening because of these uncertain times that we're in, and they're so pivotal. It's this really pivotal time that we're in, and it's also polarizing. And there's a lot of people exhausted. They don't want to keep moving forward. They just don't have it in them. So I believe that a lot of NDEs are happening right now because people are tired and they don't have the strength to move forward. So they have the NDE to come back with a realization, a spiritual awakening, to give them the strength to continue moving forward. It changes you. It changes your mind. It changes the way you see life. And so that you can move forward through those limitations that have been holding you back. I do believe that we all have soul contracts, and we come here to learn. And we want to experience different aspects here. Earth is school for us. And so we come to learn. And sometimes people get that, the golden ticket, and they have lots of money and they have ease in their life, but they're maybe not learning as much as somebody that is in famine and really struggling, but they're learning so much for their soul. And that soul is being able to understand, how to navigate life on a different level, how to experience challenge, experience hardship. But that is what the soul wanted to learn. And so that the soul can come back come back and ascend, essentially, go up a level and have the next level. I also believe old souls have a much harder life than newer souls. I don't know if that's always across the board, but I do believe that old souls, because they're willing to take on a harder life, because they want to learn. Not to say wealthy people have it easy. I don't want to say that, because everybody has hardship, but some people have a lot more challenge than others.